Our grandfathers fought in wars, and you can't handle rejection? A generation of men stormed beaches, survived trenches, and fought for their lives. But today, most guys can't even approach a girl without having an existential crisis. Here's the reality. 1 in 3 men report not having been intimate with a single partner in the last year. That number has tripled over the last decade. Over 50% of men report not having approached a single woman in the past 12 months. And 30% have never approached a woman in their entire lives. Meanwhile, at the same time, 77% of young single women are reporting that they wish they were being approached by men more often. So what the is going on here? Well, to put it simply, men are becoming more passive, weaker, and more afraid to take risks. Men are often choosing loneliness over momentary discomfort. And the worst part is, they don't even know they're doing it. So this video is a bit of a wake-up call. In this video, I'm gonna break down, firstly, the real reason why men are struggling so much with their dating lives today, how fear and risk aversion is keeping us single, and finally, the one thing that you need to start doing today if you want to turn everything around and improve your dating life and transform your life for the better. And by the end of this video, you're gonna have no excuses. And remember this, you, my friend, are at the end of an unbroken line of successful mating pairs that has survived from the beginning of life itself. You are a survivor, a marvel of genetic engineering, the most dominant apex predator this world has ever seen. Are you really gonna let that line end with you just because you're afraid or too lazy? So if you're a man who really wants to change his life and ensure the successful continuation of his genetic line, then stick around. This could be the most important video you watch all year. Let's get into it. In this video, I'm gonna be sharing some interesting statistics and theories regarding one of the major variables contributing currently to the male loneliness epidemic. Now, I recently read an interesting study by Dr. Thomas of Date Psychology, where he hypothesized that risk aversion was actually one of the primary contributing factors to the massive rise we've recently seen in sexlessness and loneliness in young males. His hypothesis was this: the reason why men are currently 3 times more likely to have been celibate in the last 12 months compared to 10 years ago is due to lack of initiative. In essence, men have become more afraid and passive, less likely to take risks. So, let's get into some damning statistics, shall we? Did you know that over 50% of young single men report having not approached a single woman in the past 12 months? On top of that, 30% of young single men, report having never approached a single woman in their entire lives. Yet 60% of single men report some level of dissatisfaction or dysphoria regarding their single status. Yeah, you heard that correctly. A majority of young single men are currently unhappy with their current dating situation. However, paradoxically, they're not currently doing anything to improve their situation. It makes you wonder how we've become so emotionally weak and fragile that we're willing to ruin our lives in order to avoid momentary discomfort. So, what are the primary reasons for this inaction in young single men? According to the recent study, fear of rejection and fear of social consequences. It seems that the men who are most risk averse, so the ones who are most afraid of taking risks, are also the ones who are least likely to have approached a woman in the past 12 months. And funny enough, an interesting statistic here is that the men who are most risk averse, so most afraid of stepping out of their comfort zone, are also the men who are most likely to identify as either red pill or black pill, which is really interesting, and I'll get into some further points on this a little bit later. So evidently, it's the men who are more likely to take risks and more likely to step out of their comfort zone, who are also the ones who are most likely to have dating success. Whether men who are more risk averse are more likely to not step out of their comfort zone and not take risks, and are more likely to then make excuses for their lack of success instead of actually doing something about it. Interestingly as well, 77% of young single women, so that's single women between the ages of 18 and 25, report wishing that they were approached more often by more men. 35% of young single women reported not having been approached in the last 12 months, and 16% reported not having been approached a single time in their entire lives. And these are young single women. So men often worry, oh, I'm interrupting her day, she's going to think it's weird, or she's just going to reject me, she doesn't want me to talk to her. Where in reality, 77% of young single women want to be approached more often. That is a huge number, and it makes sense. One of the biggest fears that my clients do express before they start approaching women is fear of getting a negative response from the woman that they're approaching. Where in reality, if you approach in a calibrated manner, about 90% of the women that you approach will give a relatively positive response, even for a beginner. 10% will absolutely love you, about 15 to 10% will be pretty dismissive, and about 1 in about 100 girls will be actively rude or mean upon the approach. Now, the largest determinant of her reaction is how you approach her. Now, yes, things like your age, your height, your physical appearance will have a small impact on her initial impression of you, of course. But by far, the most important determinant in terms of how receptive she's going to be upon your approach is how you approach and your general social awareness. If you're getting a disproportionate number of negative reactions upon your approach, then most likely there's something you're doing in how you're actually approaching that's creating resistance in women. There are many micro details in an approach itself that can have an impact on the reactions that you are getting while you're out doing cold approach. And often it will take a reasonably experienced eye to iron out all of these micro details. In short, if you're getting a lot of dismissive or negative reactions to your approaches themselves, then I would highly suggest you invest in some form of coaching, or at least find someone, a friend, someone you know who has a bit of experience with cold approach, who gets decent results themselves, and watch and learn from them. Just whatever you do, don't be the guy who gives up because he never really gave himself a chance and even invested in himself. Most guys do give up without even giving themselves a real chance. Whether it's that they feel that they're different, or they can't handle a little bit of rejection and they just think that they're cut from a different cloth and it's like, this is for other people can do it, but not me. Whatever it is, most people don't give themselves a chance. So don't be that guy. Actually give it a shot. It's like, say you bought a new car and your car broke down on the side of the road. Are you just gonna leave the car, or are you gonna get it fixed? Of course you're gonna get it fixed. Why the would you not do the same for your dating life? If something so fundamental to your happiness is not currently going the way you want it to go, and you know that there's something you can do about it, why would you not take every single action possible in order to improve your circumstances? The funny part is, for most guys, the issues that are holding them back often are things that can be solved within a day or two. It's really not that big of a deal for most guys. It's not that hard to learn how to do cold approach, at least to have some level of success. If you're obsessed and you want to become a mega pimp and you decide that you want to hook up with half of Europe, then fair enough. That's going to take a long time in order to improve your social intelligence and skills to get to a point where you have a high enough level of consistency socially in order to get to a point where you're able to even do anything like that. For the majority of guys, they just want to have a couple of cool experiences, date some cute girls, and then when they meet one who they think is amazing, settle down. That's what most guys want. And if that is your goal, me, bro, that is such an easy goal to achieve. And the fact that most men don't ever achieve it just because they can't handle a little bit of rejection or pain or discomfort genuinely is sad. And as I was saying, for the majority of women that you approach, you will get a relatively positive reaction. Even if she wasn't romantically interested, she's most likely still going to appreciate that you had the balls to go up to her and give her a compliment. She will appreciate it. See, a lot of guys worry about, oh, I don't want to interrupt her day, or she doesn't want me to approach her. Think about it this way. If you were going about your day and someone approached you and showed interest in you and complimented you and told you that you were very attractive or desirable, whatever it might be, would that not be a net positive on your day? Even if you weren't necessarily interested in this person, would that not still make you feel good and leave you with positive energy? That's essentially the same thing going on here. Even for the really attractive girls, number one, they are barely approached. Most women feel like they aren't approached nearly as much as they'd like to be. And number two, the worst thing you're doing is giving her a compliment. You're making her day. So you need to stop stressing about interrupting her, things like this, because it's just not true. And I know what a lot of guys are probably thinking right now as they're watching this. They're going, oh yeah, of course she wants more guys to approach her, but only the ones she's attracted to. Otherwise, she's gonna deem them as creepy or not be interested, blah, 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 whatever, insert whatever neck beard, fedora wearing excuse you want to insert. And that is, actually true to a point. Wouldn't you prefer to be approached by a woman you're attracted to as well? Well, on that note, thankfully, for us as men, how women perceive our desirability is not static and based purely on our physical appearance, like our jawline, our bicep circumference, or our height. Women primarily determine whether they are attracted to us through our behaviors, our mentality, and how she feels in our presence. Physical appearance is secondary to these principles, and thankfully it is not static. You can change it with how she feels around you. Think about it this way. If women chose who they wanted to be intimate with purely through physical appearance, they would behave a lot more like men when it comes to mate selection. It would make dating pretty simple. And in reality, considering you're sitting here watching this video, then that's obviously not the reality that we live in. See, men, we can make a decision as to whether we would be physically intimate with a woman purely based on her appearance. We know instantly as soon as we see her that, yep, she's attractive enough, I would have with this girl. Women take time in order to assess whether they want to be intimate with us or not by assessing our behaviors and how she feels in our presence. It's why a man's attraction is like a light switch, flick instantly into it, and a woman's is more of a light dial. It slowly turns up. That's because it takes her time to assess us, because how she chooses a mate is not based purely on physical appearance. It takes time for her to assess our personality, which is why it is slower for women than it is for men. Ironically, it was the men who reported feeling that women were too picky or had too high a standard or were too shallow who also were more likely to have not approached a woman in the past 12 months or even in their lifetime. So in essence, they create a self-fulfilling prophecy where they blame women for their lack of success, but never actually go out to test and assess whether their original hypothesis was even correct in the first place. They just assume. That's stupid, bro. And ironically, for these men, this bitterness is more likely to be integrated as belief systems that is going to manifest as unattractive behaviors, thus making them less desirable to women if they were to make a feeble approach once every decade anyway. So in the end, in a way, it's a self-induced celibacy. So that being said, let's look at the stats of the men who reported having approached a woman in the previous 12 months. Now you have to remember that this is just an ordinary cohort of men, not guys in the seduction community. So this is just people who make the odd approach just every now and then in their daily lives. This is not a common practice for the vast majority of the people in this study. Also, you got to remember that only 50% of men between 18 and 40 actually made an approach in the last 12 months. So let's have a look at these numbers. Of the men who did approach a woman in the previous 12 months, only 41%, so a minority, reported no success at all. 47% reported having been intimate with one or more women in the last 12 months. If you think about it, almost half of the men who made an approach last year were able to turn a cold approach into a hookup. That's actually quite impressive, really. And 28%, so nearly 30%, turned a cold approach into a relationship of 2 or more months. So what does this tell you? Well, if you were to just implement the behavior of cold approach into your life in some way or another, this next year you have a 30% chance of starting a relationship. Those are pretty good odds, if you ask me. This also poses another interesting question. Do you believe that 25% of all single men between the ages of 18 and 40 are tall, rich, and handsome? Obviously, that isn't the case. This is some pretty damning evidence for those guys who state that, a woman only wants to be approached by a tall, jacked Chad who has a high income and a massive schlong. And in my opinion, this is evidence that proves that these guys are just making excuses to avoid having their little egos hurt by a bit of rejection. If you think about it, the only reason why this whole idea that women are only going for the top 1.1% of men, like they're only going for these guys, is because of dating apps. It's the only reason. You'll notice that the guys who spend all their time on dating apps, they're the ones who go, oh, girls only want this tiny percentage of men at the top of the pyramid, where in reality, if you did any cold approach, if you had any balls, if you had the humility to learn how to cold approach, how to improve your social skills, how to have advanced communication skills so you can have flowing, good, decent conversations, get girls to invest, if you actually had the balls and the emotional fortitude to deal with the rejection involved, then you would absolutely realize that these are wrong numbers. This is completely incorrect. Obviously, women would prefer to go for a guy that they deem as higher value than themselves. However, this highly stratified idea that women only want this tiny number of men is purely because of dating apps, because there's no other way for women to identify whether they're attracted to someone other than the physical appearance on dating apps. And the problem is women aren't using dating apps that much because dating apps do not cater to women because of the fact that women don't build attraction purely through someone's physical appearance. And because these dating apps don't cater for women, there is a huge discrepancy of men compared to women on these apps, which makes it highly competitive. So don't get female nature mixed up with a terrible ratio and an algorithm that is designed to keep you lonely, sad, and paying money. Do not get those two things mixed up. That is not female nature. That is not female behavior. Yes, there is a certain level of hypergamy in all humans, not just women, men and women. Everyone wants to find someone who they deem as the highest quality partner that they can potentially get. But it misses so many variables if you look at it in such a simplistic way. But unfortunately, there is only one way you can see it if you use dating apps all the time, because you aren't given all these other potential variables in order to improve your dating life. You're given the one, that is your physical attractiveness or your ability to show her that you live a certain lifestyle. It misses so many details that women are looking for, and that's the problem. So guys, do not get female nature and attraction mixed up with a shitty ratio and an algorithm designed to keep you lonely, desperate, and paying money. Any man who also has done cold approach has realized that these assumptions are completely incorrect, or at least highly simplified to a point that they are almost demonstrably incorrect. That is my point on dating apps, guys. If all you're using is dating apps, then you are missing so much information here. It's not funny. Get off your couch, delete the apps, go out and meet some girls, and if you're having a tough time doing it, then it means you need to put the work in. Yes, we are missing some information here in terms of the statistics of the cold approach stats here. We don't know how many approaches each of these men made. That is true. However, let's just put it this way. If you are someone who is currently having zero or very little success with women, then as you can see, statistically, if you were to simply incorporate the behavior of cold approach into your life in some way or another, then you improve your chance of being laid in the next 12 months by 50%. Can't be mad at that. So if you get no results right now, just incorporating the behavior of cold approaching improves your chances of having sex by 50%. So stop being a pussy, get off your ass, get out there, start meeting some girls. Now the stats are even more impressive for women. Let's talk about them. Of the single women between the ages of 18 and 25 who reported having been approached in the last 12 months, 55% reported being intimate with a man who cold approached them. And 39% reported getting into a 2+ month relationship with someone they met through cold approach. So if you're sitting here thinking women don't want to be approached, bro, they're begging to be approached. Holy shit, that's impressive numbers. Now again, we don't know how many times each woman was approached. However, if 55% was intimate with a man that cold approached them, this is a pretty clear indicator that women want to be cold approached and are very receptive to the idea. Let's not forget that 36% of this cohort reported not being approached a single time in the previous 12 months, which is another indicator we can extrapolate that, yeah, women are being approached far less than you would think. The odds are in your favor, my friend. And don't forget that 77% of single women between the ages of 18 and 25 reported wanting to be approached more often by more men. And why do they feel this way? Because of men. We have become passive and afraid to take risks. Since forever, it's been the man's job to initiate the courting process. Men are the instigators. We're the choosers. See, women are passive in the dating world. I mean, sure, they do get to sit back and have men approach them, which is comfortable for sure. But also, don't forget that that means that their choice is restricted strictly to the men who are able to approach them. In essence, competition is essentially at its lowest in probably 100 years when it comes to cold approaching women. And in a way, women are kind of restricted when it comes to meeting men because again, they're restricted by who approaches them. Where as men, we have the luxury to choose who we want to approach. And once you overcome approach anxiety and the fear of rejection, which honestly on our programs we're able to do in a single afternoon, I mean, the world is completely open to you. Every woman you see is a potential connection that you can make. You have infinite options. And what's even more beautiful, the better you get at cold approach, the more likely you are at turning each of these approaches into a connection. But unfortunately, the majority of men are just too afraid to put themselves out there. We've become so weak that we're willing to live unfulfilling, unsatisfying lives in order to avoid just a moment of discomfort or just stepping a little bit out of our comfort zone. And you know what else? 66% of men report feeling a certain level of regret for not having approached a certain woman in the previous 12 months. So what's going on here? If 66% of men feel some level of regret for not taking action and approaching a girl that they liked in the previous 12 months, and at the same time, 77% of women wish that men would approach them more often, what's going on here? Why do men feel that there is a narrative that it's socially unacceptable to approach women? I have a few theories, but primarily I think it's due to the fact that in our heads, we overemphasize the potential risks of making a cold approach and we use that as an excuse not to approach. When in reality, anyone who's done enough cold approach knows for sure that the worst case scenario that we're coming up with in our heads literally never ever happens. But I think this is a multifactorial issue. And I don't think that it's something I can completely cover in this one video. I just primarily wanted to share some interesting statistics with you in this video. But a more recent variable, a less important one, but a variable nonetheless, is a very vocal but small minority of very angry women who have had negative experiences with men who are unable to detach their emotions from objective reality, are taking out their anger on the entire population of men, making men feel uncomfortable about, say, following their desires and going for what they want. It's the same group of radical women who will, shame men for being men, the ones with nose piercings and blue hair and are generally insufferable to be around. You know who I'm talking about. These are also women who are more likely to post on social media, go on podcasts, express their opinion online. And because it is a radical opinion, it's more likely to be picked up by algorithms because at the moment we live in a time where rage bait is a way to get a lot of attention. attention on social media, and this gets attention. This is only a very tiny minority. A vocal one, yes, but a tiny minority. The majority of women absolutely love men, and they respect men, and they appreciate when a man comes up to them and compliments them and approaches them and shows interest in them. They want that. The majority of women want that classic Disney style romance where a man comes up to her in real life and they just click. This is what every woman dreams about. The majority of women don't want to meet guys on dating apps. They don't want to meet guys on social media who slide into their DMs. The majority of women want to meet men in real life. And when I say the Disney romance, I'm not talking about Prince Charming. She's not looking for the perfect guy. She's looking for a guy who's perfectly fine with himself and who she enjoys spending time with. The majority of women are quite down to earth. You would be surprised. If you spend too much time on social media, you might not see that. But if you spend some time in the real world, meeting real women in real life and not being a pussy sitting behind your phone, you'll come to realize this. Now, I promise you, if you get off social media, you stop watching red pill podcasts, you stop swiping on Tinder, you stop looking at TikTok, you stop reading rage bait articles on the internet, and you stop listening to mainstream media and start only listening to sources of information that empower you and start living life on your terms, focusing on you and not everything else around you, you'll realize the world is a super open and friendly place. And if you quit the dating apps, you're gonna be exposed to far less flaky, validation-seeking, low vibration women. Now, don't get me wrong, there are absolutely some shit women out there. And if you do enough cold approach, you are bound to have a negative reaction from time to time. But that's all part of the game, baby. Are you gonna let the odd negative reactions stop you from meeting and connecting with the type of women that you actually want? What, are you gonna cut off your dick and throw it in the ocean just because you got rejected a couple of times? The guys who have the best dating lives, the most fulfilling dating lives, are also the ones who are taking the most action. And do you know what that means? By default, they're also the ones who have been rejected the most. That's the beauty of cold approach. The more you do it, the better you get at communicating and connecting with women. And over time, this just improves the likelihood of you connecting with someone that you really like and bringing them into your life. And also, with the right guidance, you can speed up that process 100-fold. This truly is the golden age of cold approach because the competition is just so low, because the majority of men are stuck at home, glued to their phones, too afraid to approach, and they're all on dating apps fighting for scraps, paying for feet pics on OnlyFans, feverishly sliding into random girls' DMs hoping that at some point someone's finally gonna say yes. Where if you can become a part of the small minority of men who are able to step outside of their comfort zone and take action that makes them uncomfortable and approach women, this will naturally set you apart from the vast majority of men just on its own. And yeah, it can be tough at first. Like any skill, you are gonna be rusty when you first start. You're gonna have some awkward as interactions, like some weird ones. You're gonna have some bad reactions. You're gonna have some interesting, weird rejections, and probably a decent amount of it, especially at the start. This is the time we spin our wheels, we put the most effort in and get the least reward. But that's part of the process, and it's an unavoidable part of the process. One thing my old mentor used to say to me, he said, Ben, embrace the suck. Embrace the fact that you suck when you start something. That way, you don't have so much attachment to getting good so fast. That way you can enjoy the process of getting better. And this will ironically improve the likelihood of you getting better because it makes the process so much easier and less painful, because let's face it, there is nothing in this world that can make us feel more pain than a woman. And as a good starting analogy for the guys who are worried about having clunky interactions and getting rejected a lot at the start, I mean, did you give up when you first started trying to walk and just kept crawling the rest of your life? Did you give up when you first started trying to drive and you couldn't change your gear for the life of you and you stalled and almost crashed the car? Now you don't even need to think, you just do it. It's the same as walking. And that is exactly what it's like when it comes to cold approach. You can get very good at this skill. You get to a point where it's unconsciously competent, just like walking, just like driving. But unfortunately, the majority of men, they give up before they even see any results because They can't handle the emotional roller coaster. They don't have the mental fortitude to handle the rejection. So they never find out what they're capable of just because they gave up right at the start. Just as a bit of extra information, no matter how good you get at this, you can't ever avoid rejection. It's always gonna be part of the process. It's completely unavoidable. If anyone tells you that you can completely never be rejected again using some technique, they're lying to you. If you're a man, you're a single man, and you want to have a fruitful dating life, whether you're looking for abundance or you're currently looking for your partner of your dreams, whatever it might be, rejection is inevitable, no matter how good you get at this. One thing that does happen is rejection becomes a lot less frequent. That is for damn sure, way less frequent, and success becomes far, far, far more frequent than you first start. Also, rejection begins to have far less of an emotional impact on you too. But at the end of the day, you can't remove luck from the equation entirely. So you either decide to play, grow, and win, or give up, pick up your old crusty sock, and vigorously touch yourself 7 times a day for the next 20 years and go through 1,000 bottles of baby oil. It's gonna be a very arduous road ahead, my friend. You have 2 options. You either win, but you gotta play the game if you wanna win. Or give up. That's okay too. If you don't care, that's fair. Now, the fastest way to achieve success in your dating life is obviously finding a mentor who is currently living the life that you want to live, who's getting the results that you want to get, and has a proven track record of getting his clients those same results. And then simply just pay the motherfucker to teach you. Again, doesn't need to be me, as long as they're getting the results you want and you know that their clients are getting the results that you want as well. And I'll tell you what, the people who give up, they're the ones who aren't willing to put in the work. And they're certainly not willing to invest in themselves. And let's face it, if you're not even willing to invest in yourself, why the is a chick going to invest in you? This journey can be an emotional roller coaster, but it's also going to be the most rewarding journey you ever went on. Remember, the vast majority of women want you to approach them. Your fear of rejection and social consequences has been overblown in your head because you're making excuses to stay in your comfort zone. And potentially a little bit brainwashed by angry chicks on the internet. Who knows? Your new life starts with hello. Now go out there and connect with some awesome chicks. Change your life. And that is the end of my rant. Thank you very much for everyone who just watched it. If you are potentially looking for coaching from myself or Alex, make sure to click the link in the description below and jump on a free consultation call with either myself, Alex, or one of our team members. Also, if you want to join our Facebook group, it's free. Guys, we have tons of free trainings and articles in there. Absolutely brilliant. And a lot of videos that we're not able to post on YouTube because of the fact that we might offend people. Yeah, probably the same angry feminists I was just talking about before. Please don't cancel me. Anyways, guys, join the Facebook group. Jump on a call if you want coaching. I'll see you in the next video. Love you. Peace, motherfuckers. I'm out.